Cool. So I had asked you a question a couple of days ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to know your thoughts on it. I asked you, what are some good films, or I guess TV shows, that's valid as well, that you think work really well when you watch it on a phone screen?
Okay. I can't think of any TV shows.
I've got one. The Office.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true.
I think The Office works on a phone screen.
That's very true. I would say, for films, I would say anything by, like, Roy Anderson. Because his films are so, like, bleak and kind of lacking in colour that I feel like you can still get the same.
Songs from the Second Floor?
Yeah. The Swedish guy.
Yeah.
Little Swedish freak.
Little Swedish freak, we love him.
We love them. Maybe The Truman Show as well, because it's so
interesting.
I feel like it would like make you feel funny about the kind of spectatorial kind of experience. TV though. I'll have to think.
Yeah. I actually feel like there's more TV, but that's partly because of the Netflix of it all. The way that they shoot everything just like...
Yeah, and we're so used to watching TV, I think, on our phones as well. Because at least, I know whenever I travel, I always will just download episodes on my phone. So you get kind of more used to it.
We've been talking about it, BoJack. I think BoJack could work on the phone because I think the biggest appeal of that show is the writing more so than the visuals. The visuals are cool, and there's a lot of like sight gags in the background that maybe you would notice.
Yeah.
So you do want to be looking at it.
Yeah.
But you know, like...
Yeah, it's not always like the most visually beautiful.
Watching BoJack on IMAX would be like, why? Yeah. Why are you doing this?
It would be kind of weird, kind of wild. I'm sure there are other shows that are like that. That's very true. But like, it isn't in the visual appeal. It's just in...
Yeah. I've got a movie, 2 movies, but they're sequels, so that I kind of want to introduce to you sometime. It's from an anime called Mononoke.
Oh, right? Princess Mononoke?
That's a Ghibli film,
right.
But this anime is just called Mononoke.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting because it doesn't really have like an overarching plot. It's like monster of the week, but 3 weeks, right? It's like different little stories. And the visuals are so crazy and so outlandish and so colorful that I think it works really well when you kind of like can have it in front of you in your hands. You can see a little preview here.
Oh, cool.
It's really cool. I love it. And I think it works really good. I think if I were to watch this on a big cinema screen, I think I'd enjoy it, but I think I'd be a little overwhelmed.
Interesting.
Because it's like so colorful and the editing is like all over the place.
You know what? I'd feel the same way probably about like Akira, you know? I think I watched that on a smaller screen the first time I watched it, and I think I would have maybe felt too overwhelmed if it was on a big screen. It's so colourful. Yeah. And it's like, it's just...
Yeah, I think maybe certain animated films.
Yeah, that's a good point.
On the flip side though, I watched The Boy and the Heron on the phone, and I wish I had seen that.
That was a really cool one to see in cinemas. Yeah. I remember seeing that at the LFF when it came out, and it was I'd never seen a Ghibli film on big screen before, and it was...
Yeah, I don't think I have.
It was so cool. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Speaking of that said though, I'm not sure if any of the films for today are good phone films.
No.
Let's revisit that at the end.
Yeah,
we'll bring it back at the end.
Yeah.
But cool, shall we get into it?
You say that after watching most of one of them on your phone.
Maybe so. Yeah. Maybe I watched one of these movies at the gym.
Yeah,
I was still taking notes though.
He's a hard worker. He's a busy bee. So.
All right, it's your turn to go first.
Okay.
Ready?
That's funny. We've both introduced each other's themes this week.
Oh, that's true. Actually.
Yeah, it's kind of fun though.
Yeah.
Okay, so the theme that Doc chose this week was the theme of first-person perspective, so POV style films.
One POV.
Which is so interesting because I've not been very familiar with this style before watching the film that I picked.
And there aren't that many.
There aren't that many.
And when I was doing research, sorry, I'll let you get into it first. I'm glad I haven't started the timer, but when I was doing research, because I already knew which one, but I wanted to know if there are more. I found people kind of like making an argument that found footage films are first-person films. For example, Cloverfield. Have you seen Cloverfield?
No.
Or Blair Witch Project.
I've seen Blair Witch, yeah.
I'm like, so is that first-person or not?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I don't really know why.
I guess, well, I wouldn't consider it first person because it's told from the perspective of multiple characters, right?
But so is your film.
2 characters. So I guess maybe it doesn't count. Well, I guess
we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But it's a tricky.
That is a good.
Maybe we should do an episode about found footage films or the sort, and then we'll be able to more kind of like.
I do think they are quite different, but it'd be good to like get into the distinctions.
But anyway, first person films.
First person films. So the films
about the first person ever
exist.
Yeah. First Man by with Ryan Gosling. That's the only one.
I chose Adam and Eve. Retelling of the Bible. Let's go. No, I chose Nickel Boys, directed by Rommel Ross.
Nickelback.
It came out like a couple of years ago now, and it's based on a novel, and Rommel Ross adapted it himself, for which he did it with a friend as well. I can't remember their name. I'll put it on screen. They were nominated for an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. They were robbed of said award.
It's good.
Yep, and it is the first type of film that I've ever seen like this. It really blew me away when I first watched it, and it's about these 2 boys. It focuses on one called Elwood, and he's a really sweet guy, like growing up in Florida. We kind of begin the film following throughout his childhood, and we see everything from his eyes, obviously, and he has this very loving like relationship with his mother, and everything seems just kind of clouded in that kind of hazy, nostalgic kind of like childhood haze. And then
it takes place in this late 60s. That time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's a period piece for most of the film. And then he is really unlucky because he finds himself being in the wrong place at the time where this like crime is committed, and then he's wrongly convicted of the crime and sent to this really brutal reform school. And it purely happens because he's a black boy and he's just like seen in this, the wrong place at the wrong time. And
literally, he's hitchhiking to get to school, and this criminal offers him a ride. He takes it, and the police catch the criminal, and just because he's there, that's it.
He's convicted. And we'll talk more about that scene later because I really love that scene. And then he gets sent to this like really horrific reform school where the black students are abused and just like treated horrifically, but it's more about the friendship that he forms with this other boy at the school, and it's about how the 2 of them kind of form like a bit of like a solidarity and like safety net between the 2 of them to just help like console each other while they're going through this experience. And kind of about how they have quite clashing like ideologies. Like one of them is like quite optimistic of like, we can get out of here, like we can break free, but the other boy's been there for much longer, so he's like less...
Very cynical.
Yeah, he's like very cynical. He's like, we can't get away, like we just have to accept that this is where we're at. And then at the end of the film, both boys try to break free, and when they are fleeing, Elwood is killed. And then the film kind of cuts to present times, and it's his friend, and he's kind of like trying to expose what happened at the school. And there's like been this like article that's come out that's basically showing like what happened and how all these dead bodies were found at the school that were buried and covered up. And we find out that after he escaped the school, he took Elwood's identity.
I was very confused by that, because maybe I was watching it on the train while I was leaving the train. But I was confused by that. He takes Elwood's name, doesn't he?
So he took Elwood's name and he lived under his identity. But I think what's so spectacular about this film is that Hollywood is not kind to the traumatic experiences of people of colour or anyone that's like marginalised. And the film
you could have stopped that sentence at the word kind.
Yeah, Hollywood is horrible. It's a disgusting place. But it's particularly exploitative of certain types of stories, and we see this all the time, whether it's the stories of like black people and the types of stories that they're allowed to share on screen, or whether it's the stories of women and like the portrayal of like abuse or sexual assault or anything. It's just always shown through a very exploitative gaze. And I think what's really interesting about a story like this is that you might initially be a bit like wary of a story that's about like really horrific trauma, that's at the expense of these like young black boys. But Rommel Ross shooting it through the first person perspective is just so genius, because it denies the chance for that experience to be exploited, because you're literally immersed in their perspective of what's happening, and it completely puts you in their shoes of experiencing it. So you're not seeing these horrible things happening to them, you're experiencing it with them.
Sure.
And you're also seeing the kind of physiological impact of these experiences. So you see the way that, like, for example, when Elwood is first confronted by the police, the entire shot is him looking down at his feet, because for him, that's his first instinct to, like, avoid trouble, like, just look down, like, don't cause a scene, like, don't do anything that's going to, like, aggravate the police, because that's the instinct that's kind of encouraged. And I just think seeing that scene from film shot from that perspective, you just feel the, like, the stress and anxiety and the suffocation of, like, I just don't want to, like, get in trouble, so I'm just staring at my shoes.
And you don't actually ever see the cop's face.
You never see the cop's face, yeah, but you just sense this, like, you just hear the sirens and this, like, omnipresent, like, danger. And normally a scene like that, you would see the cops, you would see them, like, arresting him, you would someone being cuffed, like, pushed against a car. Like, I feel like we've seen that scene a million times. But just the simple framing of just a boy staring at his shoes for the entire time, it just really, like, hammers in just the injustice of it.
And it kind of takes away the, like, camp of it. Because
and the spectacle of it. Because it's always seen as a spectacle, you know? So, yeah, and I also love just, like, it's so immersive in the way that it paints, like, memory. And, like, the film opens with, like, shots of, like, a cake knife that's just scraping buttercream off it, and, like, sunlight, like, in the trees, and, like, a crocodile that's just, like, crossing the street in Florida.
Who comes up a couple times.
And it's kind of this, like, weird kind of, like, hint at what's to come, and the danger that's just, like, in broad daylight, you know? But yeah, it's just, like, it's just really beautiful. It's so empathetic, and I think it's so challenging of the narratives that were typically fed around trauma. And yeah, it just, like, completely shifts the angle that we're looking at these experiences from. And yeah, I love it.
Cool. That's your time.
So
very
that's
good.
Me. Yes.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I want to get into mine, but first, I will talk a little bit more about what you were saying about the memory in a bit, because I have some interesting thoughts about all that. I will say, at first, I was not enjoying this film. At first, I was, like, very much like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
But then by the end, I was like, okay, I like it. But yeah, I'll get more into that later. Should I go for mine now?
Yeah, please do.
Cool. So, our films could not have been more different. Our films this time, genuinely, they're from different planets.
But I think they have really interesting commonalities. Which
I agree. Yeah, and I also think that they represent our personalities very well.
Yeah, they do kind of capture our, like, essences.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah. So the movie that I chose was Hardcore Henry. Yeah. I need to find out what year it came out. But it was directed by a Russian director.
Who is all over this project. Like,
2015.
He like fucking edited it, like produced it, wrote it, directed it, like
acted
did everything.
At least some of the first person
Really?
stuff. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. At least from what I can glean from the from my research.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of the stunts he did, because this movie has mad stunts.
Crazy stunts.
But yeah, I think at some point he did that. Yeah. Cool. So the movie is about this guy who wakes up in a science lab. He's missing an arm. He's missing a leg. And they're kind of like rebuilding him with like future science robot tech. And then the movie is very much inspired by video games, to the point that like it doesn't really matter what's happening.
The story is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's just all the vibes.
Yeah, for real. Until the end, I'd say, when the movie remembers that like there's a plot, right? But there's this woman scientist who is his wife, and she's rebuilding him, making this like superhuman body for him. They go to the next room over where they're doing more implants, and I think they do an amazing, really fun, campy thing where they Henry, the main guy, right? He is a silent protagonist, as per a video game generally would be. And they do this really stupid thing where they're gonna put a voice box in him, and at that moment the bad guy shows up, so he does not speak at all for the entire film.
I didn't even clock that.
It's so stupid, but I was like, let's go.
Maybe they just really needed to save money on their ADR costs, so they were like.
But I also feel like they couldn't reconcile a way to have the protagonist speak, which is I think Nickel Boys does well, right? Because we do hear the voices and they even sound different if you are listening to it from within their own head as to an outside observer.
Yeah.
But like Hardcore Henry being so inspired by video games, I think they were like the character can't speak. Doesn't need to speak. And he doesn't have a single line throughout the whole film. But whatever, they're in the science lab and they have to run and the bad guy is chasing them.
He's too busy to be talking. He's got shit to do.
He's got places to be, bro.
He really does.
He runs away, and then the rest of the movie he's like scampering around trying to find his way into rescuing his wife, defeating the bad guy. And the other characters in the world are genuinely like not characters but NPCs being like, go this way, go over there, find this, find that, it's crazy. There is a multitude of characters played by Charlton Copley. I don't know how to say that name. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I found that quite confusing, to be honest.
Yeah. But he plays a whole bunch of like other guys who, again, are really like an NPC bank of guys who are there to support him, to be like, hey, you need these weapons, have this gun, you need to go there, talk to this person, you need to kill this guy and take his heart, and there's a machine, and it's very, very stupid. But really good, I think, really good. I think the poster for this movie goes hard.
Yeah.
I think it goes
good
really,
poster.
really good.
Yeah.
And it's like an action film. It's very gory, in a very like camp way, not in a realistic way at all. But people's heads blown off, and blood everywhere, blood spraying everywhere.
Flying all over the place.
Yeah, there's a lot of prostitutes. Yeah,
a lot of boobs.
A lot of boobs. Yeah. And I think I don't know, for some reason, I don't know if this is gonna come up at all when we compare them, but for some reason I'm really like drawn by the dichotomy of the bad guy and him, and I don't even know what the bad guy's name is. I'm sorry for that man.
He's got a really weird name.
Yeah. It's a real weird Russian name.
Kind of relevant.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting that he's got telekinetic powers, right? So he can like lift people up into the air and throw things around. At one point, they're in a brothel, and he throws a hooker at, which is insane.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And he picks up a tray, and then he slices it through this guy's head, and you're like, ooh.
It's that type of movie.
It's gnarly.
It's that type of movie.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because I'll kind of want to get into that later when we're talking about both. But Henry is like a character who does stuff. And it's like video game progression in the sense that at the beginning of the film, once he's escaped from the lab, he doesn't really have any weapons, he doesn't have any guns, so he's like sneaking around. Whereas later, towards the end of the film, he's got like a whole arsenal of weapons and he can fight in this like very much like a video game. So his journey is about how you achieve things and the work it takes to get there, right? The work it takes to progress. Whereas the bad guy has telekinetic powers, so he can just do things without doing the work.
Yeah.
He can like throw a guy without having to use his body to throw a guy. And the bad guy has like long hair, he's kind of effeminate. He kisses Henry at one point on the mouth, which means he kisses the camera, and you see his eyes like right up to the camera. It's crazy.
That's my worst fear.
Like no.
No, I don't want to see that.
So in a way, you have like Henry, who's like this hyper masculine character, at least the way he's coded. He's like, he can fight, hyper competent, he can kill, and he does it all with his body. And then on the other hand, you've got like this duplicitous, like effeminate man who's like the bad guy, who gets around without using his body. And I was like, interesting little homophobia there. Loves it.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But yeah, we can get more into that later.
Yeah.
More into the comparisons later.
For sure.
But yeah, cool. I don't know. What should we start with? Because that's my
Well, I think off the bat, I think it's really interesting how the POV perspective in both films is about portraying violence in a very different way.
Sure.
In Hardcore Henry, it's about immersing us in the violence and making it like more intense, you know, to witness.
Yeah.
But in Nickel Boys, it's about detaching us from the violence because it frames us through their eyes, like things that are about to happen to them that are abusive, and then it will like cut to them literally looking away. Like there's a scene where like Elwood is like going into this room where they like beat the boys and like kind of torture them, and then it's really rough, but like he will like look away and then you just like hear the sounds, and it's where the sound design is really effective because like you learn about what's happening through the sound of it happening, not through them looking at it, which is really interesting because you think through a POV perspective you'd be immersed in the looking, but it's not. It's about what we choose to look away from and like what they learn through the sounds of what's happening, and that's more horrific. But in Hardcore Henry, it's very much like, oh, you are with this guy as he like jumps off a skyscraper and he like lands in a big you know thing of trash, and as he's running across the bridge and he's like beating people up and
he's like throwing this poor girl
in blood, and there's like a chase scene through the square and then someone's like decapitated, and like it's just it's very it's there to like make a spectacle out of the violence and to make it funny and entertaining. Which I thought was really interesting.
The best way that I can kind of like separate them in the way that they approach the first person perspective is that Hardcore Henry is about what it feels like to do something, what it feels like to climb a building, to shoot a gun, to do a cartwheel, I don't know. Whereas Nickel Boys is about what it feels like to be someone, to be in that environment, right? The fear, the anxiety, the kind of like glimmer of hope that you get at times versus the hopelessness of like the drudgery of doing that every single day in and day out to everyone that you know. And it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like really, it kind of shows the different perspectives on, doing versus being, kind of like action versus like inhabiting a character, right?
Yeah.
Because Henry also, silent protagonist, he does not have a character. We actually only see Henry once, his face. And that's kind of a cool shot. I do kind of like it, I'm not gonna lie. It's towards the end. A shard of glass or something. He's on the ground and it falls near his face, so you see his reflection, and then you see the wife in the back and she's like hitting a pose. I think it's kind of a cool shot. I think it's kind of a cool shot. But that's the only time that you see Henry, because Henry as a character doesn't have much to him. More on that later. But I want to talk a little about the scene that you were describing right now, about the beating up scene. Because it was something that I had a little bit of trouble kind of getting into. Cool, let me tell you what I have written down here on my notes. And again, this is around, these notes that I wrote were around the half mark of the movie. And I'm fully willing to concede that I watched the movie on my phone and it was not at all the, you know, best environment to watch it in. But I wish that I had been this, like, everyone's like, when I talk about my favorite films in the world, some are like, I wish I had made that, right? Or I wish I had worked on that. And one of the films we've spoken about in the past, Daisies, by Reda Chitila, I'm like, I wish I would have edited that, just because I'm like, that looked crazy. I wish that were me, bro. I rarely get that feeling, but you know. But in this movie, I also wish that I were the editor in Nickel Boys, but not because I would want to do something crazy, because I want to cut some shit out.
What would you want to cut?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me.
So, I'm not gonna lie. For the first, the movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes, roughly, of screen time. For the first hour, I was like, "This is not a movie. This is a VR experience. This is like one of those places where they put on a VR headset on you and they're like, walk the streets of Rome, you know, like, and there is no story, there is no characters. You see people and they have names and they're doing things, but there's nothing linking or no narrative being spun. As you mentioned, it's all memories and like the hardcore Henry is way more confident in trusting the viewer in the first person perspective. By the 15-minute mark in hardcore Henry, the main premise has been established, the character of the wife has been established, and the character of the bad guy is established, and Henry has fled the facility.
And he's got his objective.
Yeah,
like,
by
literally giving him the phone, like, you have to
be
point.
here, literally, bro.
It's very on the nose.
15 minutes in, and it's all go.
It's on, yeah.
Whereas 15 minutes into Nickel Boys, the film has only started to introduce characters. Before that, it's all about sensory things like the touch of grass, an orange, I think it is, and like it's supposed to evoke the smell. So the memories of like the butter cream thing of the knife. And 15 minutes go of the film before anything happens. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or a good thing, but I was a little bit like, okay, we get it, it's in first person, it's fine, you know, like we don't have to be doing all this. And then it kind of just nothing happens, or at least it felt like nothing happened. And then so I kind of we do have like that one very intense scene with the cop, right, which is before, and then he spends a while at the academy, and I was kind of like, I wrote down here that Elwood is interested in the world around him, but he could not be any less interesting as a person himself because there's nothing to him. He's always looking around, he's always looking at people, but we barely ever see him act or like externalize his will in any way. He's just like very internal. Again, this all changed later, and I want to address that. But halfway through the movie, I was like, this is no one. Like, who is this person? That's why I felt like it was like a VR thing, because it was like, oh, it's meant for you to project your personality into them and be like, what would you see? How would you feel about these things happening around and to you, right? So I was like, they talk about these other characters, and I was like, I want to see the movie from their perspective because they're out there doing shit, right? I want to see like what's going on with them, and the beating scene was a good example of that, because you see the horribleness happening in the room next door as he's like waiting, and it's like so tense and like so anxious, and then when it's his turn, when it's Elwood's turn, you don't actually see it.
No.
The movie cuts to pictures of real people, I believe, who were in either a school like that or that very same school.
Yeah, because it's based off of a true story.
Yeah. So I wrote here in my notes, this is a real thing that happened to real people as an experience, rather than this is something that's happening to this person. This is not Elwood's account of it. This is a generalized perspective on the situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I changed my mind by the end, but halfway through the movie, an hour and 10 minutes or 5 or whatever, I was like, this is nobody's story. This is an idea of a story.
Interesting.
And I think something I think Hardcore Henry does really well when it comes to plot is that there's a lot of intrigue about Henry's story, and it kind of comes back at the end as a plot twist. But throughout the whole movie, you don't really know who he is. Whereas in Nickel Boys, it's all presented very sequentially, so you kind of know everything. If I were to pitch a different edit, I would still keep a lot of the sensory stuff, but I would trim the fat a little bit. And I would also start the movie with him already at the academy, with you not knowing what happened. And then later, once you see how bad it is, you learn, by the way, he's innocent. He never did anything. So that would kind of like add a little bit more intrigue, because I was like, what's going on? There's like nothing happening. That said, when I finished watching the movie, towards the second half of the movie, things also take off, and there's a lot more going on, and I was like, okay, now I understand why everything happened the way that it did. You didn't mention this in your little summary, but I've been speaking for a while. I want to prompt you in case you want to talk about the whole like framing situation about who's telling the story.
Yeah, I do want to.
So I have some stuff to say, but I'm gonna let you take the stage.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really interesting, because I remember feeling kind of unsettled by the experience of watching it in the first like 40 minutes or so. And mostly because I couldn't tell whose perspective we were from. I had no idea if we were from the perspective of him as like a baby, as a child, like how old, how many years that opening kind of like 30 minutes is taking place over. If it's even from the same character, I didn't know if it was going between multiple people. And I don't know, I now I think I really appreciate that, because I mean I found it very like captivating, very beautiful, but I was kind of like, what's going on here? Like what are we, what's happening? I don't know, but I do think it's really effective in kind of just capturing like the innocence, you know, that was there, and the innocence that was like so abruptly like just like cut. And like
in Mexico we have this saying that someone is a bread of God, God's bread, when they're like pure. And Elwood, bro, fucking
he's just like
cinnamon roll
a
on a
really
man.
like sweet, hardworking, like
honest,
just like honest kid. So I do think it's like very it's good in kind of capturing like who he is. Maybe there isn't that much to him, but it's because he's young, you know. He hasn't had the chance to kind of live his life or have much, I guess, because he's just innocent.
But about this framing device,
the framing device is super interesting, and that's what kind of like gets me about this film. I think it's so genius. So like for the whole like first half of the film, you don't know what Elwood looks like. You know, like the sound of his voice, and you've like seen his POV.
You've seen a little bit of his hands.
You've seen his hands,
not
but
much
like
else.
that's it. So you have no idea, like I said before, you have no idea how old he is at the beginning of the film, like how many years it takes place over, exactly. You know roughly how old he is when he gets like sent away to this school, but like you don't know what he looks like or anything. And there's this really genius like moment in the film where like Elwood, like he goes to sit down at this like table when he's moving to reform school, and he has like lunch with all these other boys, and he's like really nervous, and like you can hear it in his like breathing, and he's like just like really scared to be there. And then quite shortly after, we cut to another perspective, except we don't know this until we
at first I thought it was like a flashback or something.
Until you then realize that you're looking at Elwood on the other side of the table, because from Elwood's perspective, he like sees this other boy, and it's this like one
Turner?
boy, Turner, and Turner is the only boy that's kind of like friendly to him, or like kind of like interacts with him, and they have this interaction, and then you see the same scene from his perspective, and then you see Elwood for the first time. So I think the film is like, it's so interesting that it's like POV perspective from one boy, and you become accustomed to his rhythms, and like, you know, you can hear his anxiety, you can hear his heartbeat, you can hear his breathing. And then we switch to someone else who's been at this reform school for a much longer time. Like I said, he has a very different perspective. He's very cynical. He doesn't have this like kind of idealistic sense of like right and wrong, and the fact that like Elwood is very sure, and like my mom's going to get me out of here. Like I'm going to be leaving. Like I'm not going to be here for long, because what's right is right, and I didn't do the crime that I've been convicted for. But this other guy's like, that's just not how
it's
it works.
not going to work.
You know, that's not how this world works. And and then from that point, like you get to experience the film from like both of their perspectives.
Sometimes mid conversation. It'll just go from one to the other, and then back to the first, and back to the other.
And I do think there's something really like, I don't know, because at first like the film has this almost like documentarian feeling to it. It's like, it feels like it's kind of like this like sentient being that's kind of narrating the film. Like you said, it doesn't maybe feel like it's a person, it feels almost like a collective experience, and it's just being like, this is how it would feel if you were in a person's shoes in this situation, and not specifically Elwood. But through the introduction of the POV perspective of Turner, you kind of get to see like a different angle of this school.
And it's also when Elwood starts talking, because he doesn't talk all that much before.
He's very
but
quiet.
Once the switch starts happening, you're like, oh, so that's your opinion, right? That's who you are. So that's why I would pitch it to kind of like trim the fat towards the beginning, so that we could get to that a bit earlier, and we can like latch on to, oh, so this is who you are, and that's who Turner is. And,
I see that.
And we can like, you know, follow it more.
Yeah.
But then, as you mentioned earlier, the movie is told from the perspective of, kind of broadly from the perspective of Turner, who's taken Elwood's name. And I think the moment that I was like, oh my god, that's insane, was towards the end. Elwood gets shot, and then instead of being a first-person perspective from Turner, it's suddenly behind him. Suddenly, you see the back of his head, and it's almost like it's Elwood's ghost. Was kind of like following him around, and in then present day, I believe, I don't know how they said certain time, but I was a little bit confused in the time because the computers and the stuff they were using looked very modern, but they said that they had left the school in 1967 and it was like 20 years, and I was like, those computers do not look like 80s computers to me. But whatever, honestly, probably just misheard it, right? When they're talking about the present, and Turner is doing all this research about this whole thing, it's like Elwood's ghost is behind him, and he's like reconnecting with a few of the other guys who made it out, and they're talking about the other guys, and it's just when that happened, I was like, oh my god. And it's not only just like a shock plot twist, it also speaks to their characters, because at one point Turner tells Elwood, like, you can only trust yourself, right? You can't trust anybody in this place. And so Elwood starts keeping a record of all the things that are actually happening in that place, because he wants to expose it. And then it doesn't happen that way, but for the whole movie, when you are seeing those kind of modern bits of what you think is Elwood, he's still doing that. He's still doing that research to expose it. And then when you find out that it's actually Turner, it's like, also that's the impact that Elwood had on him, which is like so tragic, and like, as you said, like a brilliant piece of storytelling, right?
And it's so effective in its kind of what it's saying about the way that this type of trauma doesn't only affect one person, it doesn't affect who it happened to. Like, this type of experience is like a collective thing that's happened to so many people, and it's also about like how it impacts like a community, because like when it switches between POV perspective, it's also because that's the time where they become friends, so they become like closer, and they form like a nice like little union where they like help each other out, and like
they see the world
from each other's perspectives, and they challenge each other and try and help each other, but also through that they become intertwined in their like experiences and pain, and like how they and their suffering as well. And you see that particularly in the end of the film, where you realize that yes, he's escaped, but he's been living literally with the pain of like what happened to Elwood for his entire life, and he's been living under his name. So it's just like
my last note when I was watching is literally like, this is probably the greatest showcase of systematic racism I've ever seen. Because as you said, the horrible things that happen in there that nobody cares about, and then you go out into the world and surprise, nobody cares. And that was just like rough.
It's really dark.
Especially when you don't really know who the investigator is. At first I thought that it was turned out to be Elwood's descendant, son, grandson, something like that. And I was like, they're still living with all of that happened. Like, oh my god, crazy. Horrible, bro. Horrible.
It really is.
Change of pace though. We get a foot shot. Foot fetish check.
Where's the foot shot?
They're working at a house, and there's a pool. Elwood sits, and we get a close up from under the water at the feet. I was like, come on, feet check.
Yes, we do.
Let's go.
We do. I feel like there's quite a lot of feet in Hardcore Henry.
Probably.
I mean, there's so many different body parts.
There's all sorts of body parts all over the place.
All kinds of like things.
And a little technical bit, but I want to talk about Hardcore Henry. The ADR is rough.
It's rough. And not only is the ADR rough, but like, we spoke about this while we were watching the film, but like the accents and the actual performances themselves, like there isn't that much good acting. Like, it's purely about like what he's doing and the spectacle of what he's doing.
The best actors are the stunts, far and away.
Shout out to the stunt people.
My favorite line in the movie is this guy is running away from him, and he tells him, "You're half machine, half pussy." I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
they made the film because they wanted to put that line.
They 100% did. Yeah. My favorite scene was when there was a musical number and they sang "I've Got You Under My Skin."
Yeah, that was really good.
That was wild. I was not expecting that.
So I don't know. I'm just kind of looking through my notes. To see. I was thinking about how like genuinely this is such like it feels to me like fan fiction. Right? It feels to me like they give. I know that this film cost $2 million to make, and I think
$2 million.
Yeah,
they did that on $2 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think it does look a little After Effects at points.
Yes, also it's really impressive considering the scale of
because they go all over the place.
Yeah, and I think there were points where I thought this was really smart because they kind of tried to do it as though it's filmed in one take, but they have cuts at all the places where there were clearly like obstacles in filmmaking where it was just too difficult to film.
Yeah.
So there's like a scene where they're like chasing a guy across a bridge, and then like there's like a doorway that comes up, or like a weird like kind of like structure that's like difficult to climb across, and I was like, oh, I wonder how they're gonna get across that, and they just cut to like 3 seconds later when they're like past it. And I was like, that's so clever because they still maintain the like rhythm of it feeling like it's shot in one take, but like through the edit they can cut around any bits that are like a bit sticky or like hard to execute. And I was like, damn, okay.
And speaking of all the stunts that they make, I really would be interested to see how many people played Henry, because I'm sure that the skill set that one stunt person would have to jump off a car, for example, would be different from the one running on top of the bridge. Yeah. So they'd have to change Henry's in the middle of it, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is quite funny. In the sense it's kind of almost similar to Nickel Boys, in that the like person that you're from the perspective of is almost like interchangeable. Yeah. Because it's not so much about like the person doing it, it's about
kind of like the experience.
Which is kind of funny.
But yeah, Hardcore Henry is like genuinely the psyche of like a 16-year-old boy.
It's so
silly. Put on the big screen for no good reason.
It really is. It's just like, okay, what do we want from an action movie? We want blood, we want gore, we want running, and we want boobs. And that's it. That's the entire movie. And then a Frank Sinatra musical sequence, of course. Yeah.
And this is a spoiler territory, right? But towards the latter end of the film, you realize that the wife is not really the wife.
Oh, yeah.
She is actually with the bad guy.
Yeah.
And kind of like his memories and affection for her were all designed by her to kind of manipulate him. And I'll get back to that in a second. But I kind of find it interesting that it kind of, this movie really shows a worldview where women are there to fuck, and men are there to fight. That's it.
Yeah.
No in between. Even the friendship that kind of develops between the main guy and the clone guy is just because they fight other men together. Right? There's no like real bro moment, other than the musical, I guess, which is odd, but I like it because I was texting you about it. He just bursts into song, and there's like this full camp moment. And the movie never really like punishes that camp. It's just like it just goes on with it. Like everything else, it just goes on. I will say at the next scene, they have a moment when the clone guy goes, "By the way, just because I like musicals doesn't mean I'm gay." Yeah. And I'm like, come on, you didn't. Yeah, I know. You didn't have to say anything about it. You didn't need to have the no homo moment over it. But whatever, it's fine. But anyway, talking about kind of like the message, or I don't know if it's the message, because what is the message of Hardcore Henry? Guns are cool.
No, but you're right. It doesn't have a message, but like even when you aren't really saying anything and the story isn't saying anything, it reveals so much about like the male kind of idealistic view of like the roles of men and women, and like what is like I don't know, because it relies so heavily on these like really stereotypical action kind of tropes. That says so much about how this director views his place in the world and like the role of men and women. Very revealing as well that like the woman is like, you know, she's like painted as like, oh, this like, you know, wife, and she's so sexy and so beautiful, and he wants to be with her.
She's a scientist in high heels, full beat, hair flipping
full
like,
glam. She's got like red lipstick, and she looks really good.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the movie, the whole reveal where it's like, oh, she was the bad guy. Like they're kind of like making her out like, oh, she's like some slut that's just like the
this
wife of
conniving
all the guys.
harlot.
This conniving little like
because
witch,
kind of like sorry, before you go on, like a little plot twist that happens there is that they realize that Henry was just like some guy. There really was nothing particularly relevant or special about him.
Yeah.
He was just some dude that they took his body, they put all this machine into it, and they kind of tried to make a super soldier out of him. And then to be able to manipulate him as best they could, they created this character of the wife.
Yeah, this like
and then the final boss or like the last pre-final boss, right, is him fighting all the other Henrys, all the other men who have been given that exact same memory set, who all believe the same story about themselves and who all have the same drive to kill the other one. So in a way, it kind of like showcases kind of the power of hegemonic masculinity, because we are trained to be that like action guy, that guy who gets shit done, who gets the girl, who will protect the wife. And she, as you were saying, she's presented as this like double crossing, untrustworthy, just like an absolute harlot.
Conniving.
Just completely. I was like, oh my god, bro.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked.
It's kind of rough.
But it's also like interesting that they know that these men will have no intrinsic like motivations unless there's like a woman that they have to like obtain.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite interesting that like in that world, masculinity rests on the idea of like impressing this woman, but then at the end of the film, it's like, oh, she's the one that's like, you know, she's the villain because she could never actually be like obtained by them.
Yeah.
She already belonged to this like other guy,
so they
were being tricked. You know. Which is interesting, because initially I was going to say that, like, Hardcore Henry feels like the POV perspective is about, like, being in control of your body, and in Nickel Boys it's about being out of control and not in control of yourself. But in Hardcore Henry it's also kind of like, well, with regards to, like, the way that masculinity controls you, you are just a robot. Like, it's kind of saying that like, you are just, like, powerless to your body, and the, like, higher motives that are like thrust onto you as like, this is your driving force to be a man.
This is your job to do.
And do the fighting. So
and I'm like, was this on purpose?
Yeah, I don't know.
Were you thinking about all this? Like,
That's
were you secretly making like all of these messaging in Hardcore Henry, or what the hell, bro?
I have no idea, because like judging from his later films, it seems like they are like, I haven't seen them, but it seems like Nobody was like another film that he did. I don't know, that's like a really loved film, and he worked with Bob Odenkirk, and he's a really smart actor. So part of me is thinking like maybe this was something that he was like trying to poke fun at, but also the film is so fucking stupid that I'm like,
the film is so dumb. And the many prostitutes of the film genuinely act like GTA prostitutes.
It's so bad. They're like, what are you doing? They just have like no.
And there's that whole scene where there's like 6 of them or 5 of them. They're all wearing the same wig. They all speak the same. And Henry's like passed out, and they're like, "What if we touch his dick?"
Yeah.
I'm like, bro.
It's so silly. And even there are 2 girl fighters in the movie. There are 2 women that are like assassins or something. But even them, they're very like stereotypically just kind of like, I don't know, they're just kind of like bitchy, like
one of them is labeled as the dominatrix. That's like her role,
and they're both wearing like leather and like loads of makeup and like skimpy
interesting
outfits.
that you brought her up. I forgot about this, but I found this very interesting. In one scene, Henry's on top of a car. Describing scenes in this movie is insane. But he's on top of a car, and the car explodes, and he flies up into the air, and then he lands on the motorcycle that she is driving.
Oh yeah.
And this is a visual. I'm very sorry. I'm going to try to describe it for the people who are just listening. But he is basically riding pillion behind her. Because I learned that that's what that's called. When you're like behind.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, that's what that's called. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So he's like riding behind her, and she has a gun, and he reaches like basically into her crotch to pull out a gun.
Oh wow!
I was like, what the hell is going on?
Oh my God.
what the fuck?
Damn. Yeah.
And that's how he gets a gun. And I looked at that moment. I was like, oh, fucking put that in the notes.
Yeah. It is funny. There's like, a complete lack of respect or regard for their bodies. It is just like, for most of the film, they are just kind of like sexy set dressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the one woman with like an actual role is just like
evil. And conniving.
Evil, bad. Yeah, horrible. Yeah, so...
Not to be trusted.
Yeah.
I will say, though, one similarity that the movies have is that at least with the pre-evolution of Turner, before Turner gets to know Elwood and kind of like basically learns to trust him, his view of the world is very much the view of the world that Hardcore Henry ends on. Hardcore Henry, at the end, once everything is said and done, he's like, you may find some bros along the way, but you can't really trust anyone. You can't trust your wife. You can't trust the man. You can't trust anybody. You can only trust yourself and what you can do with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what Turner originally was saying
True.
Was the case.
Yeah.
And it's even to the point that at one point they're fantasizing about leaving the school, and Turner says like, when I leave, I'm not going to take anybody with me because they're going to slow me down. I'm going to get caught because of them. But then when it comes down to it, he changes his mind.
Yeah.
He takes Elwood with him, and he doesn't make it, but Turner does. So in a way I was like, oh, you do see in both cases that like hegemonic masculinity mentality where we men have to basically rely on just ourselves and keep everyone within a certain like distance.
Yeah.
But in Hardcore Henry, it's like a deconstruction that ends up reinforcing it, whereas in Nickel Boys, it's kind of like a subversion of it. To be like, you start that way and then you think about it for 2 seconds. Yeah. And then you change your mind.
Yeah, exactly. No, that is true. Yeah. And it's also funny because I feel like at the beginning of Nickel Boys, like, you know, the way it is very insular in the way it's portraying those like early experiences and memories, and it all just feels kind of like, yeah, just like you're seeing a lot of details that don't have much bearing on the later plot, but perhaps that is also kind of like an instinctual thing of like, oh, just stay like focused on yourself, like it maybe that is that kind of survival instinct of like having like more of an insular kind of world, so that you don't like get caught up in the outside world.
True.
And it is interesting, how you see that in the like POV thing of like it's solely on his perspective, and but then it broadens when he goes to the school because he's being kind of like forced out of his like
inertia.
Yeah, exactly. And he's being forced into this other world where he, you know.
I will say though, because I don't know if I finished saying it, but in the end, but by the end the movie did win me over, Nickel Boys, because not only did like a lot of plot happen, but there were also plot twists. There were also like reveals. I was also like, oh, this isn't just a simulator. This is a real story with a lot of real meaty characters that stand up against each other and with each other, and they make sense in the context and stuff. It isn't just like a vague abstraction of an experience. It is a real thing that happens to these people. I just wanted to make sure that I said that because by the end of the movie I was like, okay, no, I get it now. I do think it could be trimmed down a little bit. And in a way, I'm like, I don't know what to do about Hardcore Henry because it's only an hour and a half long, but it feels like flipping
so much
bro.
Longer.
It feels like it goes on and on. And I was
the last half hour, I was like,
I was telling my friend about it. I was like, at some points, I just have to like pause the movie and like look at the wall and be like, ooh.
I know, and it's also annoying because you can't even play it on like not even 1.5 times speed.
You throw up.
Like,
it's
so fast.
There's so much camera movement and oh my god.
I tried at one point. I even just tried to put it on 1.25 speed, and I was like, I can't
enough.
Do that. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm locked in now.
Yeah. But yeah, what we were talking about, the last kind of line, really the last line of the film of Hardcore Henry is, we should know the name of the wife.
Isn't she just called the wife?
Or
like the scientist?
Estelle.
Oh, Estelle.
Estelle,
okay.
What a name.
Yeah.
What a name. Estelle is hanging off a helicopter. Again, describing the scenes in this movie is
so
crazy.
Silly. It's so silly. And the sound it makes when
Yeah.
It's the fact that you can hear her going, ah!
Through a closed door in a helicopter. But she's hanging from a helicopter.
Yeah.
And she goes, listen to your heart.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I'm like, Henry has no heart.
Yeah.
Not only literally physically, because it got changed
robot.
with like he has to, again, video game mechanics, he has to like change batteries to stay alive.
Yeah, he's got to recharge. Yeah, got to double up.
That aside, there, like, again, that view of masculinity doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have a need for empathy or understanding or emotion of any sort other than like pure survival instinct.
Yeah.
If the bad guy has telekinesis as a superpower, Henry has adrenaline as a superpower.
Yeah, and like empathy or like heart is like a hindrance to your ability to be a man, you know.
Your ability to be hyper competent at any time.
Yeah, it's an extreme. So it's like very anti, like, I don't know, an anti-woman in that sense.
Yeah,
kind of
I kind of want to meet someone whose this is their favorite movie.
Yeah,
I'm like, what's going on in that little brain of yours, dude?
It's just, I don't know. It makes me intrigued to see his other film though, Nobody, because like I know that was really like it did really well when it came out, like commercially and critically, and they even made a sequel. I'm just intrigued to see what this guy's about.
What did you think of this one though? What did you think of Henry?
I will say, like, I liked some of the action in it a lot, and I was, like, locked in through some of the stunts, you know, like, when he's, like, jumping off buildings, I was like, that's really fun to watch.
Yeah.
But just, like, performance, dialogue, like, story, I was like, this is a mess.
Yeah.
Like, the script is a mess.
But
I was, like, just impressed by how they managed to do so much. Yeah. And, like, I don't know, it's one of those films where you can just, like, really feel the, like, passion. You can tell it's a passion project.
Yeah.
And I kind of just like watching any film where you can just tell that someone really was just like, I really want to make this film.
Which is the case for both, actually.
Yeah.
It's the case for both. Even though I'm like, I think that there were some studio hang-ups with the Nickel Boys. I feel.
Well, because Nickel Boys was a huge box office flop. To the point where like Ramal Ross is now having to turn towards like philanthropic ways to fund his future projects. He's like doing fundraisers to be able to direct other films, which is crazy. The idea that any like Academy Award nominated director has to like do
that's
fucking,
crazy.
like,
and also someone as talented as them.
So talented. Like to make this, he did a documentary before this, which I think is interesting. That this was his first like fiction like debut, you know, because you can really feel the documentarian like strands in Nickel Boys, but yeah, just like crazy to think that he can make something like that and have to like fundraise for his next film, while the director of Hardcore Henry is like he's not had any issues with making other projects that are probably as lucrative as this one. So
anyway, on that note, to wrap things up, if you were to make a first person film about something, what would it be about? I want to tell you mine.
Okay, do you go first?
I used to be an open water diver, to go down. And there is something about the experience of you're down there 20 plus meters underwater. You look up and the surface is like, whoa, the way up there. And you can't speak, right? Because you've got the little tank. You can only see through those goggles. And the constant like, that's what's keeping you alive.
Yeah.
What you've got in your tank is it.
Yeah.
If you run out of that, bro, you are in trouble.
That's such a good idea.
I'd make a first person film of that.
Yeah, because also just like the ocean is so fascinating because it's so like mysterious and like the depths are just so unknown. So like seeing, whenever I watch anything that's filmed in the sea, I'm like, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That would be mine. That would be my pitch. Do not steal.
Idea.
OC.
Yeah. Copyrighted by Doc. Honestly, this is gonna sound so stupid, but like I would do it from like the perspective of like a really famous like celebrity that's got really bad diarrhea.
And they're just like
like from the perspective of like, imagine like someone that you think of as like really glamorous.
Yeah.
And like, you know how like sometimes people have that perspective of celebrities where they're not quite human because they're almost like godlike. I would take like a really ultra famous person and then just do it like a day in the life, but they have like terrible diarrhea. So they're just like
constantly having to be like, sorry you guys, I'm out of here.
And it's like, but it's like on a really important day.
Yeah.
In their lives, so maybe they have like big talks or like a presentation or like the Oscars and they just have to keep running off stage and you just hear the like grunting, like breathing while like explosive time.
Like the camera like looking straight at the wall, at the door, just like, oh.
Yeah, like then they look over at the door and they see like someone like knocking, like, is someone in here? And then they like brush up and they go out and they're like, and the Oscar goes to.
I like it. It's what a thing to humanize literally people in the perspective of someone.
Yeah.
And that's something we all do.
Exactly. I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do.
On that note, if you were eating during all that, enjoy.
We're sorry.